Hello, everyone, and welcome to SPED Homeschool Conversations. We are so glad that you are with us tonight and joining us on Facebook Live. Or if you're watching us on this recorded session on your YouTube channel, or maybe you're listening on our podcast. But anyway, we love that you are joining us. And tonight we have a special guest, once again, on SPED Homeschool Conversations, and her name is Lani Carey. Welcome, Lani, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Hi, Peggy. I am so glad to be here.
Yeah, we're glad that you're here. Tonight, our discussion is going to be about learning through play and games. And that may seem very simple, yet to some parents, that may seem very difficult, especially people like me who are very serious and find that games and playing with my children is very hard. And sometimes I needed help while I was homeschooling to get me kickstarted in that direction. So I'm glad that you were so passionate about this. And so this month we've been focusing on our conversations have all been about movement and getting kids out of their chairs and into learning beyond the books. And so this is the last of our 4 conversations this month that we're going to be talking about this. And Lani, I'm excited when I was talking to you about maybe coming on another month. You're like, oh no, I want to talk about this. So I know that we're going to learn a lot from you tonight because you've done a lot of research and you've done this with your own children, and you're just passionate about homeschooling. So can you tell us a little bit about you and I guess your homeschool journey, and then just the work that you do with HomeLife Academy as well?
Okay, Peggy. Yes, as you said, I'm Lani Carey. Now, I usually work with seniors at HomeLife Academy, but I love the little ones, and I love play. And, it's kind of hard to talk to high school moms that your seniors need to be playing, So, but I have a lot of the moms who get referred to me because they're interested in unschooling, maybe, or that whole child-directed learning, things like that. So it's always get directed to me. So then I can have these conversations with the moms of a real education is what I like to call it. So, I actually got a book from my brother. It was called Play, way back in the early 80s, maybe even late 70s. So this lady, Catherine Garvey, was a colleague of my older brother's who is a psychologist, research director at Vanderbilt. He started me off early, with this psychology of play. So when I started homeschooling my kids, it was just natural for me to know that this is the way kids learn. Now, moms, homeschool moms, lots of times this is a hard concept for them to think that while my kid is out there, running around the yard, that they're really learning. That's very difficult for moms.
Especially when we're held to higher standards as homeschoolers, because we're almost, and I think it's even harder on parents who have children with struggles, and special needs, because we feel like we have to prove all the more that our children are learning and that they're getting through these books and they're, working so hard. Yet that's not the case, is it?
Well, one part of me is very relaxed, just let them play, but the reason is because I know the science, and that's why I want to share this with homeschool moms. There is so much science behind that, and I needed that. I remember when I started homeschooling, my husband said, "You're so unstructured, you're never going to be able to do this." So I started out very structured, just like most of us did. And, then as time went on, I was able to get, a little bit more unstructured, but it was the science that backed me up. And I was able to say, you know what, this is the way kids learn. So I've got a couple statistics, and you're absolutely right. This is what I did with my kids. So I've got 4 children that I homeschooled. They've all graduated from college. I've got 2 grandchildren who have graduated high school. And we've been doing this for a long time. And
So there we have some evidence.
Yes, so we have the evidence. So my younger son, who is actually leaving next Sunday for Iraq, now he's in cyberspace warfare. So
Wow.
he has been chosen to be on this like joint chief of staff committee or whatever it is he does to, get a plan for the whole cyberspace warfare. I don't really know what he does, but anyway. But it's so funny because when I've been talking to moms and doing workshops on this, he totally recognized that this is the way he learned. So we want children who are not going to be followers. And I always tell moms, it doesn't matter if your child has been labeled as gifted or OCD or ADD or ASL. It doesn't matter. They all learn the same. Isn't that incredible? So if we can find that common denominator, and you know what it is, playing.
It's playing, exactly.
Games and so it's so cool because I talk to moms who are struggling and they've got one child who is difficult. Then they may be, struggling with learning, some kind of learning disabilities. They may be struggling with physical things going on. They may have an extremely gifted child that's off the charts in math or English or something like that. And so, they're trying to get curriculum, which I get that. We need curriculum. But
yeah, unfortunately, it boils down to that's the first question they ask is what curriculum. And then you and I are on the other end of the phone going, just get rid of it. Don't even think about that for such a long time because, yeah.
And I tell them, too, that ideally we would not need curriculum. We would let them learn through real life, real books, real experiences. But we do use curriculum because we want to make sure that, we're doing what we think we ought to be doing. But, so here's just one example of maybe many moms out there have this going on. So I was counseling a mom at a curriculum fair a couple of years ago who was ready to throw in the towel. She had 5 babies, and the oldest was kindergarten.
Oh, wow.
So you can imagine that, a baby. Kindergarten. And I said, okay, tell me what your day looks like. So she described she had all this curriculum for her kindergartner. And then, of course, when you've got that mindset, the other babies are always getting in the way. They're interrupting what she's trying to do, and she's constantly trying to really put them down for a nap or do something with them. And so I said, wait a minute. No, it's never going to work like that. Here's what you do. You play. They all play together. And that's the neat thing about having special needs kids, is that that's the common denominator. All kids can play.
All kids will play, exactly.
Well, and some kids, now, not all kids will play together, but they will all play. Now, some are going to be over there in the corner doing their thing. That's okay. You got this home, and it's home education. So home is the most important word there, not the education part. It's the home. This is our home, and this is where we do things. And we do things for the most part, as much as possible, together.
Right. It all comes back to relationships.
Yes.
And I think we've talked about that in other broadcasts before, is that learning happens through relating. Yes. And we can't relate to a textbook. If we're doing it with somebody, then that's when that connection comes. And we wonder why, when we just give kids something to do in a book, it doesn't stick as well as when we're talking with them, or why they desire for us to come into that and do it with them. It's about that relationship.
Yeah. And, the statistics say, if we want to teach the way kids learn, and we don't want to have to keep reteaching it, we want them to retain it, right? And so statistically, kids are going to retain 90% of what they turn around and teach someone.
Mm-hmm.
So when I heard that statistic, then I totally got why I never had to reteach my daughter, my youngest daughter, because I kind of felt like I was leaving her behind. I always felt like I was just, she was my little unschooling experiment, because I was so busy doing things that I would feed her books and I would let her play, which was the best thing I could have ever done for her. But you
Right.
know what she liked to do? Play school. She loved to play school with her
Oh,
dolls and her animals. So I would teach her something, and the next thing I knew, she's got the whiteboard and the chalkboard, and
mm,
she's got her little class there
oh,
that she
cute.
was teaching. Well, that put it in her mind. That set it in her mind. And I
Mhm.
would never have to go over things with her. So
Yeah.
that is play. That's
Right.
how fun.
Using their imagination and thinking beyond just, and being able to take ordinary things or, dolls and turn them into people. And those are gifts that textbooks and doing worksheets cannot build those neural connections in
No,
our
no.
children's brains.
Absolutely not. And you were talking about motion, doing things through motion. One of
Yeah.
my favorite ways to teach grammar is this grammar in motion. So
Hmm.
you can do this with all ages together. These kids don't have to be on the same level. You can have little preschoolers who they don't know anything about grammar, and
Right.
all the way through high school if you want. So we would all get together in the living room,
Mhm.
and I would do just all kinds of different things with them. For example, like for the little ones, it might be as simple as, you know, it might be written things. Sometimes it was written, and they would have all kinds of different colors of crayons and markers,
Mm.
and then it would be like, okay, write your name in red, do this. And, we would do some things like that they could do, easy things. And then we would get into the action grammar. And usually it would be me reading or telling a story. And I would say, okay, every time you hear a noun, maybe, or something that starts with a B, it could be anything that they're learning, from easy, and then it would get harder and harder. So,
Right.
every time you hear
Yeah.
a word that starts with a B, I want you to raise your right hand. The little kids are following along, raising
Right.
their right hand,
Yeah.
and then add to it. And now every time you hear an adjective, clap once. And well, we would keep going until, of course, we just get silly and fall down in the floor, But, but they were listening and they were learning. And my kids learned their parts of speech like that. They learned everything
Right.
like that. But it was fun. And see,
Mhm.
that's the thing about play is it is fun. And when kids are having fun, you do not have to make them do school. They
Mm.
love it. They are naturally learning. Here's a statistic for you too that's
Okay.
rather surprising, because it's the whole thing of unstructured versus structured play. Now we
Mm.
can all agree that structured play probably has some merits. The moms and they're doing things and it's play. But what about totally unstructured play, where the
Mm.
kids are just doing what they want to do and the moms are not guiding, they are not
Mhm.
interacting at all? We usually think that that is kind of not so much a learning activity, right?
Mhm.
But you know that science shows that kids learn more from unstructured than structured activities.
Really?
Even kindergartners, 5-year-olds, are learning math and math concepts 46% of the time during unstructured play. Isn't
Hmm.
that amazing?
That is
You
amazing.
can underestimate that. Anyway, I'm doing a workshop in Nashville, and
Yeah.
it's going to be interactive, all about teaching the way kids learn. And
Mm.
it's going to demonstrate why and how that works, that they
Right.
can learn more through unstructured than structured. That's where we want our kids to be.
Well, they
Because
have to learn problem solving because when
exactly,
you hit a barrier and it's structured play, that barrier is kind of removed for you, or it's already been pre-planned out. where
Exactly.
you're doing something completely on your own. I was thinking as I was reading through your notes, I growing up had Barbie dolls, but
Yeah.
we didn't have much money. And so I couldn't buy her clothes and I couldn't buy her furniture. And so my parents just, I had stuff around the house. And the incredible things that my cousin and I created for furniture and clothes, it made me think about how did that structure my brain differently than if I was given those things as pre-bought toys. It would not have done the same thing. And I think we do that for our children by saying, well, we can give you all these nice, neat toys that'll help you learn. And yet we've removed those problem-solving barriers for them.
You're absolutely right. Yes. I had a junk drawer, and the kids loved it, especially if it was raining and they couldn't go outside. So there was this big drawer in the kitchen, and all the junk got put in there. Broken phones, just everything went in there. Everything that didn't have a home, I'm very big on things having a home. But everything that did not have a home and that we picked up, it would go in the junk drawer. And it would be things like popsicle sticks, maybe, or just any kind of raw materials, little string, and like I said, all kinds of broken appliances and, small things. Well, my kids loved the junk drawer. And they would go and they would start pulling out all that stuff and making things. So kids have to be able to do that. And lots of times I think moms will look at something and think, oh, that's junk, throw it away. No, it would go in my drawer and they could pull it out. And I didn't have to worry about them destroying anything, But they're going to be figuring out and inventing things.
Yeah.
So that was a big thing. One thing that I always did was I love puppets.
Oh, yeah.
I am convinced that kids can learn anything through puppets. They can
We just do counseling through puppets.
Yes, they can learn anything. So we have puppets. I'll show you some of our really favorite ones I've still got. But early on, we would read a story and then we would make puppets. Now, they could be out of popsicle sticks. We saved all socks that did not have a partner. We made sock puppets a lot. Every kind of puppet you can imagine. And then what happens is the kids want to do, I would usually do the puppet show first. And then the older kids, we might do the puppet show actually together. So the little kids all lined up.
Right.
And then the little kids want to do it, and we keep playing. And then pretty soon, of course, I've walked off, and they're playing, But then they're adding to the story, and then they're doing all kinds of crazy things with the puppets. But see, we have to let them do that. We don't ever end with the structured play because, like you said, they don't figure it out. They're not problem solving then. But oh my goodness. Through the years, the puppets we've done. So, okay, here's some of our favorites. I just got to show you. We have puppets the kids still play with. And then their other favorites are the whale and the shark.
Oh my goodness.
So they have some real stories that go on with all these. And we got a lot of smaller ones too. So that's an easy thing to do. They can get behind the couch and do their puppets. They can make puppet theaters, which we have all kinds of puppet theaters through the years.
Well, I'm thinking too, if you're adding these after a story, the story almost becomes a prompt for something that comes out of their imagination. And how often when you're listening to a story, do you imagine other things going on or what could have happened if?
Absolutely.
And so allowing your kids to go down those paths, and puppets are an awesome way to do that because it allows them to get out of themselves, especially if they aren't comfortable. I know my son that is on the autism spectrum can never get him to act anything out unless he was like a soldier. But when you got a puppet in his hand, he wasn't that person, and it was so much easier.
That's exactly right. Then it's the puppet.
Right.
So kids who would never say anything, they would be so shy. But, if they're the puppet talking and it's not
Mhm.
them, they're hiding, right? And
Yeah,
it's the
exactly.
puppet. So
Mhm.
we learned science like this. We learned history,
Awesome.
everything
Mhm.
with the puppets. So that was one really cool thing. Another neat thing that we did, and it's kind of a weakness of mine, is stuffed animals.
Uh,
Like, how do they get so many stuffed animals? Because I can't resist, right? But that was another thing that my kids learned science. And, look at all the classifications of animals and insects and
mhm.
all that. Well,
Uh,
my kids they learned a lot of that, well, through puppets, right?
mhm.
And through all of their animals. So I've got my grandbaby who's 11 months old now. He comes
Oh.
over. I've got my big basket here that he plays in. So
Mhm.
there's everything. There's, oh, well, we got all our little stuffed animals, of course. And
Uh-huh.
then, well, what about this guy?
Mm.
So he plays with all these. And the thing that parents can do with that little bit of parent directed play is while they're playing, as kids are getting a little older, you go, well, how would you put these in groups? You
Mhm.
don't tell them. You're just asking. You're just letting them group them. And it's amazing how kids start grouping things together. It's like, oh, why do these belong in this group? Well, because they all have the same kind of eyes, or they're all
Mhm.
blue, or they all have fur, or they all, there's going to be all
Right.
kinds of different things as they go. So with kids, you just play
Mm.
with toys. I think we've gotten away from that a little bit, which I think is
Yeah.
sad.
It's like everything's supposed to have a purpose, and if it doesn't have a purpose, or if it's not electronic and you can't bring it, with you everywhere because you're moving so fast, then it's, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
which they can learn through the electronics and through
Mhm.
video games, of course.
Yep.
But, we never need to get so structured with our kids' days. And I have to say, I was kind of in that mode for a while where we
Mm.
were doing homeschool and then they had their piano and someone had dance and then they had baseball and they had taekwondo and finally my husband had to step in and say, Lani, what are you doing?
Mhm.
What are you doing to our children? And I had to back up and go, oh my goodness. Now, the one link that we've got to Einstein Never Used Flashcards,
Yes.
oh, I recommend that book. Some of it is
See if I can
online.
pull it up
I think
here.
I put one of the links, the whole
Yep.
thing might be online, but it is awesome because these two moms who were researchers, PhDs in psychology, they actually started backing their kids out of structured activities because of what the research was showing, and they
Mhm.
needed unstructured free time. So the kids, even homeschoolers, they're getting stressed now.
Mhm.
They're doing all this in the name of education. This is
Yeah.
good for you, and yet some of it's counterproductive. So
Mhm.
our kids need that totally free time, and it could be video games. It
Mhm.
could be out swinging or climbing trees or reading books, but we've
Right.
got to let them have that free time and not
Yeah.
just schedule. So that's what I see happening today
Mhm.
that's,
Yeah.
harmful.
Yeah, it's crazy because we were trying to get my daughter, who's very gifted, ready to do post secondary high school while she's in college high school, because academically she's ready, and I could just see the stress levels rising in her. And so after about 3 months of this year, I said, I'm pulling back. We are not doing this. I don't see any benefit coming out of this because her career path really does not require college anyways. It was just something that she could do. And, that's just kind of the momentum you feel like you're being pushed at. And so I just said to her, you know what? We're doing art. We're doing a lot of art because
Uh,
that's where her passion is and where she wants to go with her career. And so, So I said, you know what, we're going to take the next 3 years, because not only do we have this year, but the 2 years we were planning on you doing college in high school to finish high school. And you've got basically 3 classes left to finish and that, because she's already done everything else. So I said, so we're just going to fill it in with stuff that you just explore and learn. And oh my goodness, it has made a huge difference in her mental stability and mind.
You don't even realize it.
And I can't even, she's learning so much. And yet it kind of feels like I'm kind of taking time off of homeschooling. So yeah, we have a comment here from Jessica. She said, "Hey everybody, hi Jessica, thanks for joining us. We appreciate your comment, and anyone else who's joining us, please feel free to put your comments up, your questions as we're going along. We just thank you for joining us tonight in this discussion about games and play and learning, and you're right, there is so much research that, but yet it seems like the research that we do get is junk science. And it comes through because it supports our education system.
Yes, absolutely.
And it doesn't support how kids are really learning. And we can, I mean, if we look at the evidence, we see our kids are stressing because of the way we're teaching them, and we're trying to get them to hit these levels of learning that are way far in advance of where they should be anyways. And we're all kind of suffering from that process.
Yeah, and I think some of it is because we love to brag on our kids.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we love to say, oh my goodness, my 3-year-old is reading.
Yeah.
You know, where it's just not the same in your parent group where you go, oh yeah, well my 3-year-old has started talking, or he's running around the yard. I mean, you know, we want these things, and yet, you know, one is not better than the other. You know, so we can talk about games a minute.
Mm-hmm.
So, I love games.
Yes, let's do that.
So games are fun. And I think that families have gotten away from that. You know, they've gotten away from the, hey, let's have game night.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And so,
although, you know, it's coming back with the younger generations. I'm seeing this with my younger siblings, and I even read a book recently about how game playing is coming back in as the culture. And I see my middle son takes off to go play games at a game store, just board games on Thursday nights with the whole group.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so it is coming back, and they're too complicated for me to learn all the rules. I like the old games where you just roll the dice and move.
Yeah, well, one of our favorites for teaching math was Yahtzee, which my grandmother, you know, my grandmother introduced us to that. Mm-hmm. And I can still remember her getting, you know, like 5 5s, you know, Yahtzee, but that, and it teaches, you know, it teaches all the basic operations. Because they have to add up those dice, and then they have to learn how to multiply, you know, to do all stuff, and then add in the extras. So we love Yahtzee. And, you know, there was multiplication bingo. The kids loved that. That's how they learned the tables, you know. And then, of course, there's all the ones like Scrabble. And but I just had things, like I have a big bag of letters and one of numbers. Now, this is the unstructured part. You got the games, right? You get them going in the games. But then you don't stop there. While they're all into that, I would get out the big bag of just letters or numbers or both, and you throw them out on the floor or the table, and the kids play. Then they start playing. Oh, same with dominoes. Oh, we always had dominoes. You know, the things they would play and make with dominoes. But, you know, a very simple thing that I always would tell my elementary moms is I said, you know, my kids learned all the basic math operations using a quart jar of dried beans. So I filled up a jar with all the different kinds of beans, different sizes, colors, and the kids loved it. My grandkids loved it, even if it lasted that long. You know, and they would, oh, can we play with the beans? You know, okay, you know, like, oh, But
Uh-huh.
it's great because they jump out the beans and they start playing. And, this is where the, parent-led play can come in a little bit because you
Hmm.
start watching what they're doing.
Yeah.
And as you see them grouping them into sets, for example, because all these are alike and all these are alike,
Hmm.
and then you see them counting them, and then you see them grouping, and then you start teaching. Well, how many how many threes do you have? And you start teaching multiplication. Oh my
Mm-hmm.
goodness, the things they would play. Now, sometimes, especially with the little ones, the beans are people.
Oh,
They're
yes.
families. You got your
Uh-huh.
little families, but whatever
Uh-huh.
it is, oh, we had so much fun with those. So there's very simple things that you can do that
Mm-hmm.
are invaluable when it comes to
Yes.
what kids can do with them. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that sometimes, we get a toy, and what can you do with it? If you can only do one thing with that toy, it's
Right.
not as
Yeah.
valuable, you know? So you want these things that are really versatile and the kids can do anything. We were at my brother's once in Colorado, and he didn't have toys. He didn't have young
Uh-huh.
kids. So next thing I know, my daughter, who was at that time about a year and a half, she's at his desk. She has all his paper clips. Now, they're not the little paper clips, they're the big plant,
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
all the different sizes. And they were a family. She had the
Oh.
mom, dad, all the kids, and played
Mm-hmm.
a whole thing. She played for hours with those paper clips,
Wow.
you know?
Mm-hmm. That's imagination, definitely. I mean, you have to see beyond the object. So Jessica's got a question for us. She said, do you have any suggestions for me? This is my first year homeschooling. I'm homeschooling 10th, 9th, 5th, and 2nd, first kindergarten and pre-K. Wow, you were busy.
Okay, so she's got six, 3K up through 10.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Awesome, Jessica. Well, you know what? You should be having a lot of fun in your house.
Definitely.
And like I was saying about the mom who had the five kids that were five and under, you know, it's it's difficult if your mindset is we've got to do this and this and this, and then this is just interrupting. And the young kids are
Mm-hmm.
always interrupting.
Right.
That's not, you can't do that. Oh, so for history, for example, your kids, your older ones are going to have time to do their book work, to do their work. They're ninth, 10th grade, and you have a seventh grader, I believe. So they can do that sometimes, but then there are going to be those times when you can get together and whatever it is they're learning about, play a game and let those little ones in. So, for example,
Mhm.
we spun the globe once at our house, and my older son really wanted to learn about Africa. Now he
Mm.
was only kindergarten that year. So, I had a baby, 3-year-old, and a kindergartner, and then I had my older daughter. But she was doing her own thing, her high school stuff. So he made sure that when it spun, he put his finger on Africa. So they got out all their animals. We ended up with a tent in the living room and all
Mhm.
the animals and camping out and reading about things, and then they would play, right? And the play would just be amazing, like they were really there. And then the hallway was the Nile River. One of the back bedrooms was Egypt, where we did pyramids and everything. We spent
Yeah.
an entire week playing. That's what we did. Reading books, playing,
Mhm.
making things. Well, at the end, my son dictated to me. He wanted to write down my adventures in Africa. And
Mm.
he could write very well, right? So
Uh-huh.
I wrote it down. He copied it. And when my mother-in-law came for Christmas, she could not believe it. Now, she taught in the public school system for years till she retired. And she said, I cannot get my junior high kids to write like that. And
Mm.
she said, if I did not know better, I would think he had really gone there. How did
Yeah.
you get that out of him? And I said, well, he did go there. Now, see, that's
Mhm.
what play does for you. You
Yeah, it
go
does.
there. And
It
for your mind, as far as your mind is concerned,
Mhm.
you are there. When you play, it becomes real.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that's
and I would
why,
even suggest for Jessica, you've got older kids that are, reading these books, doing some things that the younger kids, maybe you do a read out loud that the whole family's doing. But
mhm,
ask your older kids, how can we create the environments that are in your books for your younger siblings? How can we all, use their imagination? Because Mom, you're tapped out. I know I was. I had my 3 kids, an exchange student, and three foster kids at one point, and I was tapped out.
let
So
the older, exactly. You let
yeah,
the
let the older,
older play with the
let
younger.
them dictate their stories, and then they're still writing, they're editing, they're doing all of these things, and yet your younger kids are being able to play even more and get involved in the process. They aren't in the way, they're part of the learning process as well.
Another great way to have the older ones do reports is to let them be a person that they're studying about. Let them
Oh
dress up like
yeah.
that person, and they are that person. And then it's not just a report on what Madame Curie did, or any of these people. It's them. So they're dressed up and they're saying, you know, Jane Goodall, I went to Africa and I did this and so
Yeah.
that's great. It's kind of like live puppets.
Oh, yeah. And you could even tell your younger kids, I'm thinking back to Jessica again, you can even tell your kids, we have a very special guest coming to our house today. And, and just put on a performance, they work on acting skills, they work on the reporting skills. It's so many things you can involve in that, and just playing.
Absolutely. And it takes the pressure off mom, because
Mm-hmm.
lots of moms I talk to say the same thing that you said to me, Peggy, like, oh, I can't really think of all those things, and it's just,
Yeah.
but kids can though. So you let them plan it out. You let them decide a lot of this stuff. And not only is it going to be so fun and entertaining for everyone, and it's going to be teaching them speech skills and all this kind of stuff. But they're going to retain it.
They're going to retain it, and their self-confidence is going to go up too.
These are the
Especially if
things
they're a child that, I was thinking, especially if they're a child that struggles, with the academics. When you put learning into a play environment, you almost remove those barriers.
Yeah. They did one study with kids after high school, years after high school, but there was one group of kids that everything they did was termed as work. It's schoolwork. This is
right.
your school, and you have to do this, and you have to do this, and it was work.
Right.
But now the other group of kids, everything was play. Now this is how I presented everything to my kids. I never made them do anything. We absolutely never ever had a battle over schoolwork because it was not work. It was, hey, let's do this. Let's do this.
Right.
So everything was fun. Even if they knew it wasn't fun, but it was presented like that, And these kids, years down the road, their whole high school or all their school years were great, very positive. The ones who it was presented as play, they enjoyed it, they loved it, and we want that love of learning. So we don't want to use the terminology like, okay, now you have to do this.
Right.
And so, you got all these kids, they're doing different things, but give them space. And I really like to say this to moms because sometimes we like to micromanage our kids and we don't trust them to learn. We've got to trust them to learn. So I use the example of my boys. They were, junior high school doing algebra. It was a beautiful day outside, and they said, Mom, can we go and do our math on the trampoline? I said, yeah, great,
Yeah.
So when I looked out there, which was not for a little while, what do you think they were doing?
I have no idea.
They left books underneath the trampoline, and they are having a blast. They are jumping and playing, naturally. Now, at that point, I could have, and some of our moms they have a tendency to do this. to go, oh my goodness, I knew I couldn't trust you. Okay, that's it. Get in here, do your math, you know. But I chose not to do that. I'm thinking, they wanted to do math on the trampoline. What did I expect, right? So they had fun. They jumped. I looked at a little while later. They're laying out on a trampoline, getting the sun on their backs, doing their algebra. It's back and forth. And you know, if you let kids do that, that is the way they learn. They go from structured to unstructured.
Yeah, and the movement too. I interviewed somebody a couple of weeks ago, and she was talking about how the increased amount of oxygen and just the science behind how the brain needs all that movement and activity in order for a child to sit still for a while, and they work at their peak efficiency level right after they have a lot of exercise. And so, but it doesn't last for long. You can't just say, okay, you've exercised today. Now we're good for the day to sit in a chair. No, that's why we have to have brain breaks and back and forth and movement, because it doesn't last long.
And kids do have their natural biorhythms too.
Yes.
So another thing that I learned is when you start school in the morning. Now, when I first started out, I was very structured. So it was, okay, come on, let's get dressed, let's have breakfast, let's come sit at the table, start our school, right? But after a while, and it took me going into my boys' room one day, they had gotten a new Connect set for Christmas. And I go in to pull them away, okay? And I stopped in the doorway because they got the instructions laid out. I'm thinking of all the things that they're doing. They're following the instructions. They're building this awesome space station or something. They're working together. And I'm thinking, wow, I don't know if I could do that. The instructions and make this elaborate thing. And then I thought, well, what if they're going to be engineers? Even if they're not, look at what they're learning. So I said, okay, y'all really seem to be into this. Would you like to just do this for school for a while? And I'm telling you, they looked at me like I was from outer space. Like, are you kidding? You know? And they're just like, yes. So I started doing that. No more starting what I called school, like promptly at 8. This was their school. And so I would just kind of monitor and go with, and then you don't have to fight with them. So my daughter would be playing with her dolls or whatever. She's playing, she's fine. The boys are doing whatever. Now, when kids get bored and they're ready for a change, you can tell. The boys will start fighting, or they'll start wandering around. And Kristen will come out of her room, and then you go, hey, let's do this. Let's do math, or let's, whatever it is. And you do that for a while, and then you can tell you lose their attention, whether it's 15 minutes or, little kids usually 15 minutes. And then we're ready to switch gears to something active or to total free play.
Right.
And so you're going with their rhythms, with their, and I'm telling you, you never have to fight with kids. To get them to do, because they're ready. Then they're ready for something different, and you present them with that.
Yeah, but in order to do that, now, parents, you need to understand that you have to be flexible.
Yes,
exactly. And you have to not be over-programmed, like we were talking about earlier, in order to allow that ebb and flow of your child's natural learning cycles to happen throughout the day, and to be observant of them and know what your priorities are when those changes happen. So you're almost like in your brain say, okay, for me, who is programmed and has the checklist, I need to know, okay, so when we're done with this, I got to pull myself away from that and then work with this child on this.
Yeah. And we have to give the set hours out of our head. Like, we're going to do school from 4 to 12 or, whatever it is. Well, you want lifelong learners. You want kids that want to learn all the time. All the time. And so you don't ever make play into work either and fool them, So I always let my kids and, it was like, okay, your bedtime is at 9, say, when they're older. Okay, your bedtime's at 9, or maybe their bedtime would be 8:30. Bedtime 8:30, or you can stay up till 9 reading in bed.
Mm-hmm.
And they all became, they love to read.
Yeah.
And so the kids, of course, always want to read. And when they're little, you're reading with them. When they're older, now you do not pick what they read. You can't say, oh, but it has to be your school book, or it has to be the Bible, or it has to be this. That's their time. You have to, and I promise you, one of my sons, I look in there and he's reading the Cabela's catalog. I'm okay with that. He's a cyberspace warrior, but I had to let him read what he wanted to. It's fine. You don't let him read at bedtime, and that's when you're teaching phonics. That's because you just don't turn everything. And I know that a lot of us moms like to do that. Let's go to the park, and we're going to find leaves, and then but there's a time for that, and you do that, and then you let them play.
Right.
So always
the play will embed what they've learned in your structured time even further into their brains as they're doing the unstructured things, because it's fresh in their minds, and it'll help them to associate that with the rest of what they're doing. I know even for me, I do my Bible study in the morning, and as I'm thinking and praying through it during the day, it embeds itself further and further into what I understand, because it's still at the surface level of what I'm thinking about. And your kids are the same way. They just process and absorb it all in.
Yeah, and that's why recess, in school and homeschools is so important, because they're going to get out and, say you've been learning about whatever it is, whether it's chemistry or biology or cowboys, it doesn't matter what it is. They are going to be playing in their free play, taking those concepts and doing experiments of their own now out on the playground, or playing cowboys, or whatever it is.
Or if you have those forts built in your house and you let them stay up for a while, they become a constant source of entertainment in your home and school all around day and night.
And I think moms intuitively know that kids learn through play, but sometimes when we're homeschooling and we take it so seriously, like this is their education now, and oh my goodness, I've got to change everything now. But the reality is that elementary kids really do well with just maybe 30 minutes in the morning, maybe 15. And again in the afternoon of structured activities, and the rest is through play, guided play and totally unstructured play. So you might have that workbook time that really should not be any more than 15 to 30 minutes in the morning and again in the afternoon. And then you can do story time with them. We would do reading with a friend, so they got their little animal. Exactly. And they're going to be reading with a friend. Well, that's going to make the most hyper kid calm down and listen to that story. When you're sitting around and you're hugging your little animal.
Oh, so true.
And there's just a lot of things that I try to get our moms out of the box. If I can get the moms out of that, it has to be like this. And just convince them, or go, just read Einstein Never Used Flashcards, and like I say, we need that science to back it up, or we're so afraid to do it. But I'll tell you what, my kids have just done exceptionally well with this method. Now, my older son went to the Air Force Academy. He's a pilot, flies the big satellite planes, and he leaves next week for Alaska. So both my boys who are captains in the Air Force, they're both leaving.
That's hard for mom.
I know, very difficult. But people look to them. They can solve problems. They can run Air Force bases. They can they travel around and I don't even know, do all this stuff, teaching people. But, they had enough hands-on and enough free time and enough, I think a lot of it was student-directed learning. Because if they wanted to learn something, I go, okay, great. You learn that and then teach me. And,
Right, exactly.
Um,
They're passionate about it and they're going to pursue it.
Exactly. And so our kids become problem solvers, like you said.
Yeah.
They become the innovators and the inventors and the ones who are not afraid to do anything.
Yeah, and that's more valuable in our society, and especially, I mean, I was interviewing someone a couple months ago, and we were talking about the future of jobs and how the majority of the jobs that we're training our children for right now don't exist. So we have to help them to be learners and thinkers, and they will be able to adapt if we teach them those skills. But if we're teaching them how to memorize things and how to fit inside of a box, it's not going to prove to be very well, because when they get out into the real world, they're going to realize there's no boxes unless maybe you're an accountant. I don't know.
Yeah. The thing is, my mother-in-law, the one that retired from the public school system, she was helping me do my little baggies for my workshop on teaching the way kids learn. And it's just a whole bunch of things in there that kids can do. She said, so Lani, you're going to give instructions on what to do? And I'm going, no, that's not part of what this is. And she said, have you ever had an adult that just sat there and didn't do anything? No. And she said, well, I would. I would not know what to do. Well, it turns out that she was schooled in private Catholic schools with nuns. And she said, if you did anything without waiting on instructions, you're going to get that ruler across your hands. And she said, I learned that lesson very well. Her mother-in-law is 86 years old.
Wow.
So how pitiful is that those lessons last a lifetime, that you would sit and wait on instructions. Right. But we don't want our kids to be doing that. We want our kids to be out there experimenting. We want them, because they've done that their whole life. They've figured out by then what works, what doesn't work. Hey, let's try this and let's try this, Exactly. And they're not afraid to try new things, like the kids who were doing the questions and answers, and there's one correct answer, and they're afraid to get the wrong one. Well, they're afraid to experiment. So there's just a lot of things that we're teaching in those methods that we don't even want to be teaching. We don't even know we're teaching those lessons.
Exactly. I'm also thinking, as you're talking about this, is we're teaching our children how to fail well as well. Because when we play games, we don't always win. We don't always come up with the right solution. It doesn't work out sometimes, but yet they don't stop. It isn't like a check mark, it's wrong, and then you just throw it out the window and hope you do better next time. No, we just reorient the play, or we play a new game and learn from the strategy that we didn't use last time, and we move on. And there is the difference, that, when you move out of being so structured, you allow your kids to see that failure isn't the end. It's just gives an opportunity to go on with something more.
Yes, exactly like Thomas Edison. What did he say? The world's greatest failure. But then that one time, he kept going. And that is exactly what they learn when they get to play and experiment. They're going to fail, and these things are not going to work, and it's not going to work. Then they find something that does work.
Right. Yes.
And that's what we want. We want those connections.
And they don't give up, because they've learned that it's not a stopping point either. It's just part of the process. Yeah. And if you make your home about that, I know that's kind of, where we've been talking about all night, is this has to be an environment in your home, is what I've been hearing you say over and over again.
Absolutely.
It's not just something that we say, oh, it's game time, and we make Friday a game day, or, in our homeschool. But this is where we focus the majority of our attention on. And the academics fill in instead of the opposite of what we would normally do.
Yeah. Our workbooks were for if we didn't have anything else going on. And we would do little workbooks. And it's like, oh, okay, we can do this. But really, that was not our education. Our education was a lot of field trips, a lot of going and doing. And if we were learning about a country, then we go and eat at that restaurant, or we make that food, and we have a group.
Right.
And, oh my goodness, my kids love ethnic food.
Oh, I know. I went for sushi today at a revolving sushi restaurant. My kids were so excited, and I was like, this is the weirdest thing I've ever experienced. You just grab a plate as it goes by. But they thought it was the bomb. So, yes. But, yeah, my kids are very into very ethnic foods and things, too.
Because they've experienced it. They're not afraid of things different because you have exposed them. They have just done this, and they played. And, we did a lot of role playing. Now, that is something that lots of times kids need someone, whether it's older siblings or the parents, to kind of get them into. But, we role played, so we lived like time periods of history, whatever we were doing. We lived it, and it was just like we were experiencing it. And so that is what play can do, is it makes it real. And they become the slave, they become the emperor,
Oh, Jessica says that she's going through what works and what doesn't work, feeling a little frustrated. Just take one day at a time. I don't know if that's my advice. What else do you have to add, Lani?
Jessica, just like we were talking about our kids learning what works and what doesn't work through play, we as parents cannot be so structured, because then we're always going to be feeling like we're failing. If we're so structured, because the reality is that life is always going to get in the way. So we have to learn that is the education. It's not getting in the way. That is it. We've got plans, but they need to be not so much daily plans that you want to accomplish, but maybe what do you want to accomplish this year? What do you want to accomplish this semester? What do we want to do? And when the time comes and the kids don't want to stay inside, like I'm thinking this time of year, hey, switch gears to projects. That's what we did. Let's plan.
At the end of the year, we always did. We always made it the most fun units ever.
And let's forget the school books. You don't have to finish school books. They're to help you.
Yes.
You don't really have to have them.
Amen. You don't have to finish them. And you can pick them up next year if they're something that has to be. I mean, if you're gonna have a gap anyways, like math, you've got to review anyways, and it's gonna go over stuff that maybe you didn't cover or that you missed.
And play some games, play some math games.
And my one thing to add too, Jessica, is your children learn more in watching how you handle it than in what they're actually learning from their books, about how to process, just day in and day out, how do we live, and how do we live together? It's back to that relationships we were talking about at the beginning. And I know some of the research that you sent me to, Lani, was that our kids learn first through how we interact with them. And so those interactions above anything else need to be your priority in working with your kids.
Absolutely. We're on the same page, I tell you. It's not that hard. Now when I talk to moms, especially when they've got, even high school to me, because all mine are, graduated. But, I do. I tend to look at the moms and say, listen, it's not that hard. Let them play. Let them play. If that is all they did, but we had our home set up with all kinds of resources. We were going to the library all the time. We were going places and experiencing life and learning those things that God puts in our path for us to learn. Then our kids are going to have a rich education.
Yeah.
You never
Yeah.
did the structured stuff.
And for the high school, and I'm sure because you're welcome, Jessica. She says, thanks so much. But for high school, a lot of parents get stressed over this, the transcript. And I don't know if you do the same thing, but I always tell parents, think about the transcript after you've taught or after they've taught themselves, because there's always a way you can label what they've learned into a class.
Yes, and I help moms do that a lot. I will help them
Yes.
take what the kids have done and put it into a course. So.
Right. So we're wrapping up our time, but you can go to places like where Lani works with HomeLife Academy and other organizations that help you structure, especially those high school years. They get so stressful. But how do I make this all fit into a transcript? And that's what you do. And it is possible. I look at all that my daughter's doing, and there's things I'm not even going to add into her transcript because she's doing too much. But it's all learning, and that's a great thing, because even for my middle son, who I just completely left self-directed, we came in and said, oh, well, you learned podcast editing, you learned video colorations, you did movie theory, and all the things that he did, we were able to call classes. You probably wouldn't have called them anything typical in high school, but they still went on a transcript, So, yeah, and English 12 is English 12. So there's lots of things like that too. But thank you, Lani, for everything that you shared, because it really makes us step back and think, are we doing our children a favor by pressing the academics as much as we are, or are we doing them a disservice by not allowing them to learn what they can learn through this unstructured time before the world forces them into structure? And I see that now with my adult children that have graduated, and I've got one left at home, and going, I can't do what I did the first two as much, although God allowed that to be upset and for me to change my ways. But I've repented. Yeah.
Maybe a good thing to do, and we totally ran out of time, which I knew we would, because we could go on forever, but, is to talk about sometime how to put these kind of classes, these kind of what we would look at as unschooling into classes and see what it is that they are really learning, and and how that you can just totally unschool, although most of our parents don't. But I love the theory of it anyway. The whole leadership education model, too, and how you can do that and have a very quality transcript and have totally prepared your kids for college or their career for business.
Definitely. Well, we will definitely have you back as a guest, and we'll talk about that. So, but thank you again, Lani, for your time. I just really appreciate it. This was such a good discussion. I'm excited for this video to keep running. You can watch the rerun on here, or we'll be on our YouTube channel starting on Sunday, and then we'll have small segments that'll come back out through Facebook and YouTube as well next week. So thank you all for joining us. Let's keep the conversation going. You can join us in our support group here on Facebook. We have 1,600 families on that support group, and so we just chat there on a whole bunch of things. But then also you can visit our website. This broadcast is partially funded by the Learning Disabilities Foundation of America, and also by viewers like you who donate on our website. And we appreciate that. We are a nonprofit, and it is tax deductible. So next week, our guest is Veda Junction. They are a brand new software company platform that homeschoolers can go in and put their own lessons on and use it to transport whatever they want to have access to mobily or on their computer for their child to interact with. It's really cool. And we're going to talk about how to use technology to kind of organize yourself and your homeschool and and just kind of take all the mishmash of things that you want to have your kids have access to and put it in one place so you don't lose it. And so, anyways, so that's what we're going to be talking about next week as we move on to our next series of broadcasts, and we're going to be talking about curriculum. And not in the way that you think we'd be talking about curriculum, because we're not focusing on one curriculum provider. We're just focusing on how you can expand the curriculum you already have, and in some very interesting ways. So check out our events calendar on Facebook for all those broadcasts, and we'll see you again next week. Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining us.